Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to say you're joining us on a very special Pro Soccer Talk today as we focus on the end of the January transfer window. Transfer deadline day is here. We've got about 30 minutes left of it. I'm your host, Joe Prince-Wright, over here in England. Thanks so much for joining us. You can see the whole Pro Soccer Talk crew is here. Nick Mendola in Buffalo, New York. Andy Edwards in Kansas City. Gents, how's your transfer deadline day been so far? It's been pretty busy, right? There's a lot of deals going on around. So, Nick, firstly, how are you, mate?
Terrific. Really enjoyed today. I think this January is probably one of the best January windows we've had in terms of action and people sort of sliding into getting it done yesterday so we could prepare for it a little bit as opposed to just getting lambasted with guys driving their cars into team training grounds or something. So excited, and who knows what might still come in this last half hour.
That's right. Yeah, we've got 30 minutes to go. It's 10:30 p.m. over here in the UK in the evening. 5:30 Eastern. The deadline, everyone, is at 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm sure you know that by now. But the whole point of this show, Andy, right, is for people to join us, send in your comments, ask us questions throughout. And over the next hour or so, we'll go through the end of the transfer window with you. We'll break down which clubs have done the best deals today, throughout January, look at maybe who need to do some more. And we'll look around Europe and the rest of the world as well at some of the big transfers in the soccer world. But it's certainly been really interesting, Andy. The last few weeks, we've been keeping track of it. How are you feeling, mate, going into the final half an hour of the window here? Because I think, depending on who you support, it's been either a very good January or a pretty bad one, right?
Yeah, I'm content with what the January transfer window has been as a whole. I think it made up for a little bit of the lack of activity and big names that moved in the summer. We got a lot of rumors in January. We got some big names that have moved around, especially as we've gotten towards the end of the window here in the last couple of days. So I feel like it's just about right. The extenuating circumstances of COVID and the financial struggles that a lot of clubs had over the summer meant that not a lot got done then. So I think teams had kind of unique opportunities to strengthen in January that maybe aren't always there. Clubs that need to sell players on for money, players that wouldn't otherwise be available in the middle of the season. So I think it's been just about right. And like you say, some teams have been very busy. Some teams have been very, very quiet. So we'll get into that. The one question that I want to ask people and get into the comments is, what's a deal that didn't get done, maybe for your club or for another club, that you wish had got done? I think that'll be very interesting because we're going to talk a lot about the deals that did get done, but what should have got done that didn't?
Are you talking about Mbappe to Newcastle? I think most people are surprised that Mbappe hasn't arrived along with Haaland. I mean, got some consolation prizes up at St. James Park, but slow it down a little.
Yeah, we got a lot to get through here, but there are a lot of deals that were rumored throughout the month that I feel like we wrote about a lot at Pro Soccer Talk and NBCSports.com that maybe come into fruition late in the window, have happened today. It's been a kind of a crazy 24 hours, especially when you throw an international break into it for some countries, and also a mini Premier League break as well with the FA Cup games coming up. So let's kind of recap what's happened today, lads. Obviously at the website, Pro Soccer Talk and NBCSports.com, you can see it going across the bottom of the screen. There it is. We've had you updated all day long with live analysis, different articles on who's gone where, why that matters. It's kind of just what we do, right, lads? I mean, if we weren't on this live stream right now, we'd be doing it anyway on a video chat. So might as well do it so everyone else can watch and chip in. See a lot of comments coming in. That's amazing. But let's focus on wrapping up the big moves of deadline day so far. The day started for me with a brilliant bit of news over here. Christian Eriksen rejoining the Premier League, signing for Brentford on a short-term contract. Gents, that was just so sensational to see after, 7 months now he's been out of the game since his cardiac arrest at the European Championships for Denmark. Couldn't play at Inter Milan anymore, but he's returned to the Premier League, somewhere where he was really, really good for Tottenham Hotspur. So that was sensational to kick things off this morning. Then we had Weghorst coming to Burnley. We'll talk about it more, but an incredible unveiling video there from Burnley. Hats off to them. But the big Dutch strikers come over from Wolfsburg, and it will be a really good addition, I think, for the way Burnley play. Obviously, some of the other twists and turns, we're still focusing on some deals late in the window that happened. Aubameyang to Barcelona. It's had so many ups and downs throughout today. He was in Barcelona. He was just visiting family. Oh, no, wait, he's going to actually maybe do a deal with Barcelona. Then it was off because of finances. Now it's back on, and it looks like he's going to be confirmed in the next few minutes. So that's a really good deal. Tottenham Hotspur, a lot of ins and outs there. In Dele, Brian Hill, Lo Celso, all leaving out on loan. Dele Alli, we think, is going to go to Everton in the next few minutes. And then coming in, Bentancur and Kulusevski coming in from Juventus. Some really good moves there, I think, for Tottenham Hotspur. So, yeah, flurry of deals late on for Newcastle as well, with obviously Matt Target, and they tried for Dele and Lingard. Lads, there's a lot going on today, but I want to come to you first, Andy. Christian Eriksen, their course to Burnley, some moves there for some of the smaller teams in the Premier League, but quite significant ones, right?
Yeah, especially Christian Eriksen. I think that's going to really interest people and see what happens with him over the next few months. So it's just a short contract, 6 months, but it's an incredible story when you consider that. And I think now that we know he is well and he is in good physical condition and he believes he can come back and play, that we can say, 7 months ago, we almost watched, along with the entire world, this man die on the field, on live television, and he is now back signed for a club. It's absolutely incredible. Just one, the commitment that he has to the game and to want to come back and prove that he still has something to give, because he was a brilliant player at the very top of his game. And if he can come into Brentford and give them 10 or 12 substitute appearances, make an impact off the bench in an area where they really struggle, and that's chance creation and goal scoring, then this could be a really nice little pickup, even if it just lasts for 6 months. There's a lot of Danish connections there in West London. The manager, Thomas Frank, worked with him when he was part of the U17 team for Denmark a number of years ago. So there's a lot of things that I think make this kind of the perfect fit. And whether you're a Brentford fan, whether you're someone from Denmark, or you have heritage from there, or you just like Christian Eriksen, or none of the above, I think everybody wants to see Christian Eriksen go into Brentford and be able to play and contribute to that team.
Just an incredible story. So I can't wait to see him back in the Premier League. And as you said, Andy, I think he's going to add a lot to Brentford from a set piece, the playmaking perspective. He's got so much to offer. And he said it's his dream to play at the World Cup for Denmark later on in 2022. So this is the start of that journey. And it was a really good start to deadline day. Nick, what caught your eye? Because I know Newcastle making some big moves, and that was obviously a club close to your heart. What do you think about that flurry of deals late in the window for Newcastle? Are you happy with that, mate?
More or less. I think Andy and I were speaking about this earlier. I was expecting Newcastle to make a number of moves, but didn't know that they could bring in the sort of game changer or fill a real need that they've needed for so long. And then I'm going to murder his name, so let's just go with the best Bruno in the Premier League, obviously. Bruno Guimaraes. And that was a caliber of player that I did not think they would be able to woo in a relegation fight. And if you've been watching Newcastle for any period of time, which besides St. Maximin, I'm sorry, there are some real issues with how they get the ball between the center backs and to the forwards. And if Jamal Lascelles and Federico Fernandez can get somebody in front of them who can control the game, someone who's going to break up the play, I think this is a player who can get the job done. And you get a feel-good signing like Dan Feel the Burn, who is going to make a lot of players around the area. He's a boyhood Newcastle fan. So I think they did enough to solidify there. And it wasn't flashy. The only team that I think could feel better than Newcastle on the whole is a team I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot, and that's Spurs. So these are two teams that I think are reshaping themselves as we speak. And for Newcastle, you have to think that they've done enough to put the onus back on the coach when it comes to the relegation fight.
That's true. It's so big now, right? Up and down the table, the top four, the European battle, the relegation scrap is so tight. So that almost enticed, I think, teams to do deals late in the window that they probably didn't think they were going to do. And they're like, you know what? Our rivals are bringing in some good players. We're going to have to double down here and try and beat them in the transfer market. Some really good questions coming in the comments. Thanks, guys. I mean, there's a lot of comments here about Aubameyang and Aaron Ramsey, Dembele. Yeah, a lot of really good questions. Keep them coming in. We'll get to them in a minute. We'll continue to break down the deals late on deadline day and the potential deals still going on. Andy, I want to ask you about Tottenham. What do you make of the ins and outs there, mate? Because there's a lot of players that have left Tottenham Hotspur today, but some good players that have come in as well.
Yeah, I think ultimately we're going to look at this window for Spurs in the last few days of the window. I think in retrospect is when the rebuild truly and earnestly began for Spurs. And you can say that it's one that should have started 2 years ago when Maurizio Pochettino, initially requested to Daniel Levy that they start to turn the squad over. It's happening belatedly, but it is happening. And I think the players that they've been able, whether to move on through loans or moving Dele Alli on permanently, they're going to save a lot of money on the loans. And that's the big thing that I think gets overlooked when we talk about loaning players out, and it feels like, well, I would just rather sell this player and get a transfer fee for them than loan them out. You're still saving a lot of money for the rest of the season on those wages that are now not being paid by you, being paid by the other clubs. So that, I think that's going to help put Spurs into a better financial position going into the summer transfer window when Antonio Conte can really go ahead and really tear into, I think, this Tottenham squad and start to rebuild it how he wants to see it and how he wants it to function. It's interesting that he got Daniel Levy to do all of this business in January. Daniel Levy doesn't do business in January typically. And so I think to me, it signals that Antonio Conte has the trust and I think a little bit more sway with Daniel Levy than previous managers have had, that he was able to get his way on this. I think Partici probably being there in that director of football position probably plays a part as well. So it's starting to feel like Spurs, everybody at the club, maybe pulling in the same direction at this time. And that's the first time that you've been able to say that about Tottenham, I think, in quite some time.
That's very good. I mean, and also it seems like they've managed to do that with a lot of pressure on them as well, a lot of scrutiny with players' futures uncertain. I mean, the Harry Kane situation is still floating around there. And it's a really intense battle for the top four with Manchester United, West Ham, even Wolves, Arsenal, maybe Chelsea dropping down a little bit. It's going to be tight. This is very important, these deals getting done late in the window. And of course, we'll keep you updated right on this live chat when deals are coming in. We've got screens, we've got emails, we've got messages going on all over the place. And it's we got less than 20 minutes to go now, lads, until the window is shut in January. And that's done and dusted. And then these are the squads that teams will have, all 20 Premier League teams between now and the end of the season. Okay, I want to focus on some of the other deals that happening or about to be confirmed. There's some transfers here that can go through in the final few minutes of the deadline here. There's some deal sheets going in, I think. Obviously, the famous deal sheets in the Premier League that give teams a little bit extra. They submit it to the Premier League. Always clubs leave it to the very last minute, right? They have a whole month, but the deal sheets come in so they can add an extra few hours to do paperwork and medicals. Dele Alli, that's the one, right? I'm looking at it now. Nick Mendola, Everton bringing in Dele Alli. They already brought in Donny van de Beek to play for Frank Lampard, who was only announced as their new manager earlier on today. What do you think about those pickups, especially with Everton in really poor form and in a relegation scrap? Let's not beat around the bush there. They're in a relegation scrap. So these are the kind of luxury players that are, yes, very good playmakers, but are these the kind of guys you need in a relegation scrap?
I don't know. I don't know. Well, here's the thing. It all depends on Frank Lampard. And you guys know, and anybody who watches our show, PST Unfiltered, will know that I don't believe in this guy. I think he set the table for Thomas Tuchel to basically come in, play all the good experienced players, and look like a genius. If Lampard can control a room, then these guys coming in can be switch flippers for them. Van de Beek's a fantastic talent. Dele Alli is going to need someone he respects to put him on the straight and narrow, or to put him in the position where he's going to deliver what we're used to seeing without doing too much of the things that hurt his team when he's out there. And so I just don't know that I buy Lampard to do that. They will get the new manager push for a minute. But remember, this team has talent and character guys as well on the team already. I mean, no one's going to look at a Mason Holgate. No one's going to look at Dominic Calvert-Lewin and think these guys don't work as hard as they can for the team. So the talent is there. Bringing in Van de Beek when you have Allen and a number of very good players in the middle of the park who haven't been living up to their potential, and knowing what Lampard does, knowing what Lampard did as a player, I should say, this is a situation for him to come in and really make his name. But I kind of think about him looking back, and I wonder how he got this job in the first place. And to me, that puts a lot of pressure on him because, when he was with the Rams down in the championship, yes, he brought Mason Mount into the universe for us as football fans. But they finished sixth and went to the playoffs, something that they basically did the previous few years. You look at Chelsea and got himself into a final, but did they not prove immediately with the guy after that they were better? And so for Everton, after Benitez fails, after Ancelotti fails, after they're considering bringing Roberto Martinez back, I think this is something where both parties, the manager and the club, have to have things happen. Considering how much they've spent, this is massive pressure. Forget relegation. The expectation should be that this guy that they're bringing in, Lampard, does enough to push them up the table with a fantastic second half. And I don't know if we can count on that.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, right? Because as Nick mentioned there, Andy, there's going to be a lot of expectation, not only on new players, but a new manager in Lampard or a new manager in Eddie Howe, relatively new managers across the league who have now had some time to bring in their own players. Antonio Conte a little bit as well, to mold the squad, to shape the squad. And now I think they might be panicking because we're seeing some deals go through late in the window. But if we're looking on the final hour now, I mean, Dele Alli's the big one. Obviously, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, which we're going to get on to talk about shortly, going to Barcelona is another big one. But there are some clubs, I think, who really could have done with some late deals going through, like Newcastle, like Tottenham, where they probably just haven't been able just to get it over the line.
Yeah, and I think Everton's another one of those. And I think you asked the right question, Joe, to say, is that the right type of player that you need in the relegation battle? It does feel like the plan at Everton is still, we don't really have a plan. Who's the best player in the world that would come sign for us? Let's go get him. It still feels like kind of the Manchester United transfer strategy of who's available, that's who will sign. It's very convenient that Dele Alli available because he's not in Antonio Conte's plans whatsoever. Donny van de Beek, also not in Ralph Rangnick's plans after not being in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's plans. So he's available. And they just seem to keep taking the players that are available to them because it's convenient and it's easy. And it's also really expensive. The amount of money that has been lit on fire by Everton since Farhad Moshiri bought the club, it's over $700 million. And that number keeps going up and up. And, they have a manager who I think Nick just kind of laid it out pretty well right there. We have no idea if Frank Lampard is a good manager at the Premier League level, at the Championship level. We don't know what his level is yet because he has only been in one job for a very short period of time with the real spotlight on him like he's going to have at Everton. The pressure at Everton, and again, Nick put it right, is not just to help them avoid relegation this season, is can he push them forward? And I just don't know that Frank Lampard has the ideas to build a squad, because that squad needs to be a lot like Tottenham, kind of torn apart and then put back together with some serious needs addressed. I just don't know that he's the right man for that. And so even with him, it feels like, they sat there at Goodison and said, who's the biggest name that's available? It doesn't really matter if they're a good manager. It doesn't matter what they've done in their managerial career. What's the biggest name out there? And that's who they ended up with. And we just don't have evidence that he's actually a good manager.
That's very true. And I think you saw evidence, though, of his big name and the kind of pull that he has, right? I think Dele Alli and Donny van de Beek aren't going to Everton unless Frank Lampard's there and he can develop them into goal-scoring midfielders and help them improve and get back to their best. And that's what they are at the moment, a restoration project, both for the manager, both for players and the club overall. But they need direction. It's got some breaking news coming in. Newcastle have confirmed they've signed Big Dan Burn from Brighton. So, Nick, can I get your initial reaction to that? Because decent window for Newcastle. Trippier, Chris Wood, obviously Dan Burn, Bruno Guimaraes. I mean, there's some really good signings there throughout the spine of the team. Are you happy with that? Because I feel like Newcastle defensively, that's where they needed to improve, right, mate?
They did. I think anything that can get and make, because I don't want to sound like I'm, poo-pooing on players who have been in the Premier League for a long time, but anything that can take a player like Sean Longstaff or Ryan Fraser or Matt Ritchie and make them a nice option off the bench as opposed to someone you focus on, even Emil Kraft, will put this team in a better position. Would having someone to run off him would feel a little bit better. Maybe that can be Alan St-Maximin, but we know Eddie Howe is going to want to isolate him out wide to give him the best chance to beat people. And that still feels like the plan. The question is, how will Howe balance the sort of challenges of fitting in these pieces of St-Maximin, of Miguel Almiron, while also balancing on what's going at the back. And I think Bruno Guimaraes is the key to that. If he is who we think he is, a thrice capped player from Brazil who has, starred in many different instances, whether that is being a possession player, moving the ball up the field, which they need quite well. And the question will be, not does he improve everyone around him, but how do they situate the midfield? Is it John Joe Shelby? Is it Isaac Hayden? Is it something else? Can they leave him alone and have him roll and turn that whole midfield depending on where the ball is? That, I think, is going to make the difference, because he is the best signing in terms of reputation that Newcastle has had in a very long time. I might go back to Johan Cabaye, because what Newcastle's done over the past few years, it's bring in names like Sissoko and Wijnaldum and St. Maximin, these ultimate promise players who haven't yet hit their peak. And this guy's there. This guy is already turned into a special player who can run your entire team. And that has to be the hope for them.
It has to be. And there's a hope for moving on to another transfer that we think is going to happen late on. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, as we said, is almost the Peter Odemwingie situation where he's hanging around in Barcelona. You remember when that deal collapsed to QPR back in the day, and he was just sat there in the car park looking like, oh no, this is going to be this is a meme, and it has been. But for Aubameyang, he was hanging out in Barcelona. He's finally got the move, a free transfer from Arsenal to Barcelona. Hasn't been confirmed yet, but it's going through the final stages, having medicals. Arsenal aren't even asking for a transfer fee for him from Barcelona. His wages alone, it's estimated, are going to save Arsenal over the next 18 months around $33.4 million. So there's that. They're saving that money. And he has been someone that obviously hasn't delivered pretty much ever since he got the new contract, 18 months ago. We all kind of saw it coming, but he almost deserved that contract because he was so good up until that point that it felt different than the Mesut Ozil situation. But then it wasn't, right? It wasn't. So, Andy, the Aubameyang situation, very strange, the way it's all played out. I think over time, we'll look back and say his goal ratio is very good in the Premier League. Arsenal won an FA Cup when he was there. Got to some other finals. And he did okay. But what do you make of that? I mean, probably, I don't know how Barcelona could afford him. I really don't know, considering their cash flow situation, but they're making it work. It's a good spot and probably helps everyone save face, right? Barcelona, Aubameyang, and Arsenal. It kind of just all works out for everyone.
Yeah, it's just another reminder, I think, that contract that looking at it as what a player deserves in terms of money is not something that you can do at an elite level of sport, where there is, one, so much money on the line, and two, there's so much pressure and expectation. Because yes, you can say that everything that he had done for the club and even did a little bit in the first period after re-signing, that he deserved, the honor of having a significant contract to kind of end his Arsenal career on. But that doesn't take into account, what does this player have left? How committed is this player still to being here and to being part of the team and fitting in and doing the same work as everyone else? And I think that's what it ultimately came down to as the issue with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang at Arsenal and with Mikel Arteta specifically. And I think that this is what I think about Arteta and Aubameyang. I think Arteta is going to miss Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang being at Arsenal rather quickly, because the whole time that Arteta's been there have been a lot of very convenient excuses that I think have been put into place for him when the team has underperformed. And Aubameyang has long been the number one of those. It was the fact that, his control and hold over the dressing room was something that Arteta had to overcome, and that he had to battle to kind of, make the team his own, because it was Aubameyang's. And so anytime that Arsenal lost a few games or they just didn't look up to it, that was kind of the excuse that was trotted out there. That is no longer there for Mikel Arteta now. And so my question is, can we finally get, one, a true sense of what kind of manager Mikel Arteta is and what Arsenal are going to be under him? But two, I think more importantly, can we now give a little bit of mild or maybe even harsh criticism of Mikel Arteta without excuses like that kind of built into place for him to protect him, because that's what it was. He was insulated from real criticism by the fact that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang was the face and could take the heat, and he could be made the scapegoat for a lot of situations. That's gone. I think life for Arteta is about to get really real at Arsenal.
Well, and Andy, let me jump in and play a counterpoint to that, because I think you could be 100% right. The hope, however, let me play that side. The hope for Arsenal is that with this guy gone, this becomes Mikel Arteta's team. Aubameyang kind of loomed over as the biggest star on the team. And now as we talk about them building into new captains and the sort of youthful exuberance, and even Lacazette being walked out the door eventually, it's Arteta's team, and it opens the door for one of these young players to take this team and become theirs. And there aren't too many times in the last few years that you can look at an absolutely instrumental, clearly this is the number one guy leaving town. We would have seen it had Harry Kane left Tottenham, but we haven't seen a Kevin De Bruyne leave Manchester City. Manchester United, have we seen that in a while? No, because maybe they haven't had that guy. So I think it's an opportunity for Arsenal. It's one that if Arteta bungles, they're going to feel very quickly like they're back at square one. But my argument against what you're saying, which I think is probably right, your argument would be, here's an opportunity for the coach to be the guy, for him to be what Pep Guardiola is in terms of looming over what happens at Man City. That can be Arteta here. Let's see if he can do that.
Big challenges there for Arsenal and Arteta to see how they rebuild without really having a recognised central striker. Or Lacazette is trying to do his best, but he keeps dropping deeper and deeper. Let's see how it goes. It's a big gamble, I think, for Arsenal, considering how close they are to the top four. Okay, gents, we're getting close to the end of the transfer window now. We've got 3 or 4 minutes to go. I want to pick your brains quickly on the US men's national team. Christian Pulisic, obviously Chelsea were linked with a late move for Ousmane Dembele. Hasn't worked out. But Andy Edwards, what does that tell you about Pulisic's future at Chelsea? I've already heard him say he hasn't been too happy about the positions he's been playing in. Thomas Tuchel hasn't been too happy with a lot of the play from the Pulisic and other attacking players at Chelsea. How do you see things playing out for him? Obviously not in this window. He's going to stay at Chelsea, but maybe in the summer. Could he move on, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that in the summer he's going to be leaving Chelsea. And I think for a lot of the reasons that we here, collectively have talked about for the last couple of years since he's been at the club, and will ultimately be the reason why. Just because a player is good enough to play at a club doesn't mean it's the right situation, doesn't mean it's the right time or the right place for a player to go. And I think that was always the worry about Christian Pulisic. It wasn't that he's not good enough for Chelsea or the top of the Premier League or the top of European football. It was that, one, it's a club that is known very well for turnover. As manager, as players, he's had multiple managers in the time that he's been at Chelsea. There's been a lot of circumstances that go into being a player at Chelsea, and ultimately he has been among the squad in the mix for those games, but he's just not gotten enough games consistently, I think, to truly develop at that level. And two, I think that has hurt the U.S. men's national team just a little bit. And I think we saw that during the window that's still going on now. The fact that he's not sharp, that he doesn't look confident, that he doesn't look like he can carry this U.S. men's national team the way that they need over the finish line to get qualified for the World Cup coming up later this year. So it just seems like that relationship has run its course, and he will move on in the summer probably. And it'll be very interesting to see kind of, one, what level club he feels that he should be at. Does he feel like he should be going to a club of Barcelona's stature? Just the fact that it's in another country maybe makes it a little bit better fit for him. Or does he accept the possibility that, okay, maybe I need to take a step down, or maybe two, to kind of more of a mid-table club and say, and this is not to, continue what I said about them earlier, but Everton, just because he's available, they don't have to sign him. But would he make a move like that? It'll just be very interesting to see how he values himself, but also how other clubs do as well. Chelsea are going to want a massive transfer fee to move him on. So if Dembele comes in the summer as a free transfer, he's absolutely gone. I don't see any way that you can bring another wide attacker into that team and keep him around, because they're going to have to pay for that move by selling someone on, and it'll probably be Pulisic.
It probably will be. It'd be really interesting to see how that plays out. George Bello obviously was the US men's national team player that moved on deadline day, went to Arminia Bielefeld in the Bundesliga. A good landing spot for the promising left back. And it's been some good moves throughout January for Ricardo Pepi and some other players, obviously Daryl DK. And the US really needs some of those central forwards to really step up in the coming months at their new clubs. Okay, gents, the countdown is on. We are entering the final few seconds of deadline day. We got phones going. We got all sorts happening right at the end of the deadline. I know there's going to be a lot of deals going on after it as well. So I want to remind everyone, thank you for watching. First of all, hello. You can see the comments coming in. Keep them coming in. We'll be getting to the comments very soon. So send in your questions for Nick, Andy, and I. And remember, head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com for all the latest analysis. We'll have lists of all the transfers done throughout January, grades on how teams have done. And there we have it, gents. The window is closed. The transfer window is closed. Teams can do some business. We know there's a few deals we're expecting to come through now late in the window, but wow, what a crazy day it's been. And yeah, we can take a bit of a breather now. I've got a beer handy. I know we got a few drinks here, so cheers, guys. Great transfer window for the PST crew. Never has a beer taste better in my life. Cheers to everyone for watching. Hope you've had a great transfer window. As I said, there's a few hours left, I think, some deals trickling through. But I now want to switch gears a little bit and focus on the biggest January deals. Now that the window is shut, what were the biggest deals of the window in the Premier League and across Europe? I mean, Nick, I'm going to come to you. Financially, the biggest deal was Luis Diaz obviously going to Liverpool. That seems like a great pickup for them. Obviously, looking elsewhere in Europe, there's some really big moves, but let's focus on him first, right? That seems like Liverpool, once again, have got ahead of all the competition in the Premier League. Tottenham and others really wanted to sign him, but they made their move very quickly and obviously been tracking him for a while. And he seems like a very Liverpool player, right? The way this man plays.
I think people who aren't Liverpool fans are going to quickly hate this dude. He is a handful. He is the sort of guy that you don't want to play against, and kind of slots in. If you're Sadio Mane, you have to be the top of your game, which he often is. But if you don't like Sadio Mane and how he kind of plays on the edge and tries to get away with stuff, Luis Diaz has a little bit of that to him. And I'm sure that when Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool went up against Porto and he got a hold of this guy and got a sight of this guy up close and personal and saw some of the stuff kind of sneaking out, and this guy, I think, really will be an absolute handful, and he fits the prototype. And you start to look at the active players they're signing. There's a pattern here. Diogo Jota is the sort of guy who's going to constantly popping his head into places and doing anything he can kind of to chew out his inch of grass on the field. And I mean, I think it is the prototypical signing for them. And I think he will quickly become one of the more celebrated players at Liverpool and one of the least celebrated players in the rest of the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, $44.7 million. That's the fee they paid initially. A lot of add-ons included in that. Great signing, like you said, Nick, to fit the mold. And just really, I think, just continuing Liverpool's smart moves in the transfer market. When they want a player, they're okay to go out and spend big. They don't bring in a lot of players, but definitely quality over quantity for Liverpool in transfer markets. That's the way they've been going. And with some of the good young players, Harvey Elliott's just coming back to full fitness. Obviously, Curtis Jones as well is coming back in. Some really good young players mixed in with new players as well. So, yeah, watch out for Liverpool in the next few seasons. I want to focus on a few other players. I can see in the comments there's a lot of angry, upset Arsenal fans, by the way. Tell us why you're angry. Tell us who you expected to come in and why you're angry perhaps that Aubameyang's left and no one else has come in. Because, yeah, you can see on there, Arsenal's let me down again. I mean, unfortunately, I feel like it's a reoccurring theme generally over the last few years. But the one thing I would say, they did spend big in the summer. So maybe that's why their outlay in the summer didn't maybe have the funds to spend right now. But if they do get into the Champions League and finish in the top four, maybe they can have a lot of money to spend in the summer. But let's focus on some of the other big moves around Europe. Obviously, Vlahovic to Juventus. He looked like he was going to go to the Premier League for a long time. That was a huge monster fee there. What are we talking, like nearly, 90 odd million dollars in the end, all said and done? I mean, that's a great pickup, right, Andy, from what we've seen of him. Juve have got themselves. They've moved out a lot of players to get him, but that's what they needed, a big target forward to build their team around. And I think he'll be a great fit for their system.
Yeah, I think what's happening at Juventus can probably be used by a number of clubs in the Premier League. Arsenal, probably one of them, Tottenham, maybe another, with how they are kind of staging the rebuild that's going on there. Obviously, they're in a very, very big transitional period. And so getting that piece in place from the get-go before then building around him, I think is very smart. And wasn't it just so Juventus for them to come in at the last minute after months and months of Vlahovic being talked about to every club, every top club in Europe, and then Juventus say, no, we'll keep him here in Italy. We'll have him, and we'll start that rebuild around him. It is going to be, I think, a perfect fit. He's going to give Massimiliano Allegri, I think, a lot of the characteristics in a center forward that he's not had, I don't know, maybe ever since he's been at Juventus. And I know he's had some good players up top in that team. Higuain scored a ton of goals for them. But I just don't think he's had like the perfect fit, the player that's an all-around type player. And I think that's what he gives. I think that's why he was so coveted by those Premier League clubs. So him not coming to the Premier League, a little bit of a disappointment. And on the Arsenal note, because he was so heavily linked to them, I agree with the comments. It does feel like it's another letdown from them because they were probably one of the 2 or 3 Premier League sides most talked about during this window, linked with the most players. And then at the end, they really get nothing over the line. They don't make any additions to help the team. All they've done since the summer window closed was really take Aubameyang out of the team, subtraction. And maybe it's been a little bit of addition by subtraction for them in that time since. But they're certainly a weaker squad now without him. Whatever form he was in, whatever version of him it was going to be. And so I'd be a little disappointed with that as well. And I know that feeling as well as someone who's followed Spurs for a number of years. It's always a lot of promise. It's always a lot of hope and rumors and brilliant players that you're linked with. And on deadline day, it just kind of comes and goes. And this year it was a little bit different, kind of the shoe was on the other foot situation for those two in North London.
That's very true. I mean, when you look at these deals that happened, the big names, Coutinho to Aston Villa, I think there's a team there that probably did some of the best business, right? If we focus on that and which clubs really gave themselves a chance of pushing up to the next level in the league. Steven Gerrard did some great moves there, right, Nick? With Coutinho coming in, Luca Dean, and Newcastle, I think, like we said, if Bruno Gomes comes in and does the business, then I think that's a great pickup, and they've had a very good window with the solid players they brought in Trippier, Wood, and Byrne, who know the Premier League and Target as well, know it really well, and very established players. So what do you think about when it comes to that, about which clubs did the best business?
I do like what Newcastle did. I thought Kieran Trippier, I think that set a tone. You've got a guy who is, again, same thing I mentioned with Guimaraes. He's a hard man. He's the sort of guy who's going to get in somebody's face if things aren't going well, not just in training, but on the games. And I look forward to continuing to see that. I thought he's been a lot. When he left Burnley for Spurs, it was kind of sneaky. He had, and we know now with Burnley, he had led the Premier League in crosses, which isn't that surprising considering the way they play. But him and Chris Wood, I mean, that signing kind of matches up a bit, right? If they get in that desperate situation, they have that big guy. But I want to tell you that while I like what Villa did, mostly because they continue to do the volume that they do, I love what Tottenham did. Betancourt with Højbjerg, you only really need one center back behind them at times, and it's going to give them so many options. Antonio Conte's move to Tottenham was the best thing that could happen for the January transfer window. When you look at what happened at Juve and you look at what happened to Tottenham, and I want to tell, we don't know how the adjustment's going to happen that quickly, but the Kulusevski move is intriguing to me. Euro this summer, he has trouble getting back into the flow of things because of an injury, but he gets out there, was it against Poland, and that 5-goal thriller, 2 assists. He's a fantastic talent. And with Tottenham participating in Europe, I would look for this guy to have success in the Premier League as we see a rotation with Bergwijn and Kane and Son and all these players. This guy could be the playmaker they need. Conte's going to know what he's getting, and we may see Kulusevski be the guy that they've wanted Dele Alli to be for some time.
Yeah, really interesting points there. It's so interesting to see these new players come in, I think, for me, and see how quickly that they adapt to the Premier League, because we know the Italian league, German league, French leagues, they're all great leagues, but the Premier League is unique. It's very different, and some players take to it like a duck to water, and others quite frankly never take to it. That's why we see the likes of Tanguy Ndombele just leaving, going back to Lyon, and there's a lot of players. Elso is another one, obviously for Tottenham as well, that's moved on. So I think it's just really interesting to see, and I'm really intrigued to see how some of these other big deals play out for Manchester City. I don't know if I think long term they may have done one of the best bits of business to bring in Alvarez from River Plate, an incredible time with Argentina and in the Argentinian league. Striker, very similar deal to Gabriel Jesus, where no one really had heard too much about, but knew he was very good and was on the up. And they've kind of got that deal done. He hasn't come in now. He's coming in the summer. He's staying with River Plate between now and then, can continue to develop. And maybe to me, that's like, well, we don't need to spend big and bring in Erling Haaland and the money he's asking for and agents' fees and incredible wages. I kind of like that City have gone a bit left field and said, you know what, we're going to go after some players who maybe that we have to develop and polish up a little bit. But Pep Guardiola and the coaching staff obviously back them to bring in a striker. And right now, they don't really need a striker to finish off a lot of these chances, do they? They're doing it all on their own with their attacking midfielders. So watch out for that for a club that did some really good business long term. And I think there's some clubs out there that probably should have done more business. And that kind of links us nicely into the questions. I'm going to jump into the questions here because there's one here from Jean-Marc Serzier, which says, left back for Chelsea still seems like a problem for the Lions. I mean, it does, right? I mean, they need a left wing back. Their wing backs, the way they play, obviously losing Ben Chilwell for the rest of the season and just relying on Marcus Alonso doesn't seem that smart, Andy, considering that they've got all these competitions going on and they need help, especially with the way that they play. They're just kind of putting Pulisic's played in wing-back positions, Hudson-Odoi, others have played out there. That's a real issue for Chelsea, considering they are not a team that is struggling for cash or players, but that is one area they've really neglected.
Yeah, that would have been a tough one, I think, to go out and make a signing in January, knowing that Chilwell, should be expected back for next season, and that it would really just be a short-term investment, or it would be a shorter-term use, but a long-term investment for the club. And I think Tuchel, maybe more than a lot of managers, given kind of some of the tactical flexibility and ideas that he has, I think he probably thinks he can get by with, maybe it's Marcos Alonso, maybe it's some of the more attacking players playing kind of as an inverted wing back there on the left side. I think he'll try to manage that situation pretty carefully. I was a little surprised to see that they were kind of linked with Ousmane Dembele, though, because of just the quantity of attacking players that they have up top, and the fact that they've even had to loan a handful of them out, including Tammy Abraham, who's having a fantastic season for Roma, playing under Jose Mourinho. It was just a little bit, I don't know, it felt like there wasn't that much of a plan, I guess, going on at Chelsea this window for what they were looking to do. And I know they had a big summer and they brought in Lukaku and they spent a lot of money just a few months ago. But it felt like that team needed something, I think, to push it over the top and really kind of guarantee not only their top four place, but I think keep them competitive for, to retain their Champions League title this season as well. So it does feel like a bit of a missed opportunity for Chelsea because, they always have the money and they're always going to be linked with some of those top players. It's rare that we get through a window like this in the middle of the season when so many deals are being done and they're not one of the ones that we're talking about right off the top.
Well, let's keep the questions going. I like this. So send in your questions, guys, for us. We'll break down some of the clubs that maybe did good business, some that didn't. A lot of it is here on focusing on clubs that didn't do good business. Cole sent in a really good question saying, Arsenal having squad depth issues when they are only in one competition is amateur hour. Tell us how you really feel, Cole. Arteta is clearing the deadwood, though. So, yeah, that goes back to the Aubameyang point, right? It's even though Arsenal didn't bring in a replacement, just to get him out of the building and kind of move on into a new chapter. That says a lot about Arteta and what he's trying to build on the young team. And he's right, though. They only have the Premier League to focus on now. So maybe they can get through to the end of the season with Nketiah and Lacazette and get the job done and finish in the top four. What do you think about that, Nick?
Well, I think that's a thing that is there's something that's being overlooked a little bit at times right now, and that is the Africa Cup of Nations, because you look at Mohamed El Neni, he's been gone, Thomas Partey was gone. So it seems like a lot of things have to settle back down before we really know the gaps. Guys have been missing. Xhaka took a red card as well. There's 3 players that can run a midfield, whether you like them or not. And I think maybe to go back to what Andy pointed out earlier, the pressure to me that's on Arsenal is Arteta just continuing to manufacture consistent performances out of a young team that is still figuring out their leaders. They really do seem to have gotten their defense in order. That was something that the defending I've really appreciated from Arteta. He's taken his swings. I mean, for how long were we wondering whether William Saliba was going to play or was he going to go back to League One again? But he has patiently built a system. And the question will be, can he get the best out of the players that he has? And not just the young players. I just kind of look at Arsenal and think they will find the goals. They have creators. The question will be, can we see them find that the consistent use and the consistent combination? Because you want Odegaard out there, you want Smith Rowe out there, you want Saka out there, you want Lacazette to finish, you want Nketiah to feel like he's part of something, and we're not even touching on all the players. Gabriel Martinelli, what's the right mix going to be? Because Arsenal needs to take that next step from look at all these cool toys to these are the guys we're counting on. We're back where we were for so many years in terms of attack.
Yeah, really intrigued to see how it all knits together, because in fits and starts, Arsenal have been really good this season and pretty much ever since Arteta took charge. But consistency, right? It's finding those combinations and those partnerships. And I feel like they're getting there slowly but surely. Okay, looking through the questions, some great ones coming in. Got a really good one here from Chris. Says, what do you guys think about the Dele Alli transfer? Andy, I'm going to let you go with this, mate, because I know you're a big Dele Alli fan, and I think we all are, right? For many years at Tottenham, he was ripping it up and for the English national team, but he's lost his way. So what do you think about Chris's question?
Yeah, that's the perfect place to start as well. I think, I was watching a few kind of Dele Alli tribute videos this afternoon because that's just a thing, that I do with my own personal time. And what I came to is football's a lot less fun when Dele Alli's not playing and when Dele Alli is not at his best. And I know that that's maybe easy to say because when he was at his best, Tottenham were very good and they were in the Champions League final and FA Cup finals and things like that. But I think you also have to look a little deeper and kind of understand what the story of Dele Alli and where he comes from. He signed as he looked like he was 12 when he signed for Spurs from MK Dons. And nothing was expected of him. The fee wasn't that high. Maybe 2 or 3 years from now, he'll develop into a useful player in the squad, something like that. And he was immediately just absolutely brilliant. And he scored some of the best goals that have been scored in the history of not only Tottenham but the Premier League. We all remember the one against Crystal Palace. That was hardly the only really, really high quality goal that he scored. And so it's a bit sad, I think, from a Tottenham perspective that things kind of ended the way that they have, and it's taken so long to play out. And Dele now moving on eventually. Going to Everton, we'll see if that's the right situation for him to go into. We've already talked about them a little bit. It just seems like it's convenient and easy for Everton to do that deal. And so I'm not exactly hopeful that he gets back to his best at Everton. It just doesn't seem kind of like the right situation. So Spurs fans are really going to miss Dele Alli. I can tell you that. He is one of those unique talents, a mercurial, not just player, but I think individual and personality that stands out and it isn't afraid to be a little bit different on and off the field. So hopefully we see the best of Dele Alli again, but I'm not so sure that it'll be at Everton. He had a great run at Tottenham. It almost feels like the last remaining remnant of the Maurizio Pochettino years and the best teams. And I know Kane is still there, but it's kind of like zombie Kane at this point after what happened in the summer. I think that's just the feeling. And that's not saying Kane is not the player that he was, although maybe he's clearly not. But I just think in terms of how Spurs fans feel about Kane as well, it's like, yeah, that's Harry Kane. Whereas it used to be, yeah, that's our Harry Kane. This feels kind of like a real changing over moment, a crossroads moment for Spurs and the rebuild. As we said earlier, it is well and truly fully underway at Tottenham.
Well, so many great questions coming in, but some breaking news coming in as well. Our partners in the UK at Sky Sports are saying Barcelona have signed Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. It's done and dusted. He's in. It's been confirmed. Obviously, the finances, we are intrigued to find out how that's worked out, but I think it's a great pickup for Barcelona. It's going to score a lot of goals in La Liga, and for their young team to have a focal point and experienced player, if he is up to his best and focused and up to speed, then he's going to score a heck of a lot of goals for Barcelona. And so other breaking news in the UK, various reports coming out that Liverpool's move for Carvalho, the young Fulham sensation, has fallen through. They haven't got it over the line, and he's out of contract in the summer. So I think a lot of Premier League teams are going to be circling for him. If Fulham don't get promoted, then either way, they're going to make money from a tribunal fee that they'll get. So really interesting to watch that situation. But a good up-and-coming player that just fallen through on deadline day. They didn't get him. So there's a lot of news coming through. So remember, stay tuned to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com throughout the rest of the evening. We'll keep you updated with all the latest news from around the league. Some really good questions coming in. I want to keep going with these questions, guys, because everyone watching sending in a lot of really good questions. Good one here. There's a lot generally from Man United fans. It seems like they're quite disappointed with the window that they haven't brought in any reinforcements really for Ralph Rangnick. But Andrew Duffy, great question here. What do we make of Man United's willingness to loan out Donny van de Beek? He obviously went to Everton, but not Jesse Lingard. What do we make of that decision, gents? I mean, does that just show how far down the pecking order Donny van de Beek actually is at Manchester United?
I don't think we're going to know anything about Man United until the tell-all book comes out one day. And I just have no idea how they're operating anymore. The Ronaldo move, Andy shared a graphic this weekend that was mind exploding about how borderline useless Ronaldo has been besides finishing. And look, that's a crazy thing to say because finishing is so important and he gets himself in position to shoot. But you kind of look at their signings and it's been the same thing for 10 years. It's, here's a shiny toy. And it's worked with Bruno Fernandes, right? I've just always thought this was a team that was going to go and sign Neymar. And now I'm thinking they're going to do it when he's 37 and can't hack it anymore. The Zlatan move worked, but for every move that's worked for them, there have been 3 that blow your mind. Donny van de Beek was wanted by almost everyone. Was he going to go to Real Madrid? Was he going to go to Barcelona? And when he signed for Man United, I thought, this is a sign. This is a sign that this club, it's not just their gravitas. There's a plan. He can shuttle the ball. He can shoot. He can play make. He can do everything out there. And he never really got a chance. And now it seems like he won't. I mean, honestly, it does not seem like, because if Ralph Rangnick's going to pick the successor too, then you got to think that it's going to be a guy who doesn't favor that sort of player as well. And I just have no idea what they're doing. Remember, was it 2 August ago that they signed Ahmad and Facundo Pellistri, and it was all 18 and 19-year-olds at the deadline? And what have we seen from then? Ahmad's on loan to Rangers. I just no idea what they're doing. No idea. Moura is a great player, but okay.
Yeah, Andy, we touched a nerve, right, in the comment section. There's a lot of Man United fans commenting now. So I know you've got strong feelings on this as well.
Yeah, I'll say something positive for Manchester United. I think them doing no business this window was one of the smartest pieces of business that they've done in a while. This would not be the right time for them, I think, to go and spend. What are you spending for right now in January? If you spend in January, you're spending for this season. They're not winning the Premier League. They're probably not, truly contending for the Champions League this season. So what are they going to spend money for with a manager in place that they know is probably not going to be the manager in 6 months' time? I get the disappointment in wanting something new put into that team to give them a little bit of a shot the rest of the season and maybe push them on and build some momentum going into next season. I just don't think it's the right time because you need to know who the next manager is going to be before you buy players for the next manager. And that's who the signings done in January would have been for. So I think a little bit of patience for Manchester United fans. I know that's not something they've ever really had to practice in their time as Manchester United fans. But, it's only 6 months and then you'll be linked with every top player all across Europe, and maybe you'll get one of them.
Only 6 months to every single newspaper in Europe and the UK is going to be talking about. I feel like a couple of players really make fit. There's some great questions and coming in about, Immortal there says they need a central DM. They need Zakaria or Kamara. They could have got them. But Declan Rice is the player that stands out to me. They need to break the bank, whatever they need to do in the summer to bring him in, and that will elevate Manchester United to the next level and bring them a whole new level of solidity. And Immortals just said that. So we're on the same wavelength, apparently. So there you go. So many great questions. This is great. We should do this more often, gents, because, this is really keeping us on our toes, isn't it? I want to send some quick hitters to you guys. Firstly, just go back and forth. Nick, name one Premier League team that did the best business? Who did the best business for you in the January window?
Sound like a broken record. I think it's Tottenham Hotspur. I really do.
Wow.
I love the Kulusevski move. Conte is someone who's going to get the best out of his players when he believes in them. He got rid of that Ndombele distraction. Even though I want to see more of Ndombele, he is clearly contending for a top 4 spot. He's going to put Spurs back in the Champions League. He's just going to he's doing everything he can to get them there. There is a vision of seeing out this season, and I think most of the pieces are pieces that could be a part of it going forward. So I really like what he's doing.
Andy, what about you? One team stands out business-wise?
Yeah, I have to agree with that right there. And I think it's also a matter of timing is why as well. If the number of players, whether they've been able to move them on permanently or on loan this month, and the money that will be saved will just be money added to the transfer fund for the summer coming up. And so that's going to give Conte a little bit more buying power in a market that's going to have a lot of players available. And I'm not just talking about with transfer fees, but there's going to be a lot of free agents this summer. We're starting to see players wind down their contracts a lot more. One, because they want a little bit more control and say over where they, where their career goes and where they play. But two, the financial ramifications of COVID have meant that a lot of players have not been re-signed to massive deals that they otherwise would have gotten because clubs don't have the money to pay those massive deals right now. And so we're going to see an influx of free agents. And I think that's one thing that we saw at Juventus when Paratici was running the show there was he loves a free signing. He got some really good players to Juventus, built a number of title teams around free signings. And we're going to see a lot of that from Spurs this summer. And they're going to be one of the first teams in on every single player that's available because they will have the money that one they've not had in the past because they were building the stadium. It seems like the financial situation due to that is in pretty good stead. But also, I think they're going to have more money than most other clubs out there. And so they're in a strong position going forward. If they can get top 4 this season on top of that, have Champions League to offer, Champions League money as well, look out.
Yeah, look out indeed. Okay, who didn't do enough business? Is there one Premier League team you think, they could have really elevated themselves, either saved themselves from relegation or got into the top 4 if they would have done more business? I mean, I am looking at Arsenal a little bit. I think this is the opportunity for them. They've been closer than ever to getting into the top 4, or not ever, but recently over the last few years. And I think if they did bring in a striker, if they did break the bank for that, then they probably would get over the line and they probably would give themselves an advantage considering they don't have European action or any cup action to worry about in the next few months or in the last few months of the season. Anybody disagree with that? I mean, I'm looking at down at the bottom, Newcastle, Burnley, Norwich, Watford, those kind of teams. Did they do enough business? Who wants it? Go at it.
Yeah, I'll take it here real quick. And I'll throw it back to you, Joe. Did Saints do enough by bringing in Willy Caballero this month? That feels like a place that probably needed a signing or two just to solidify themselves away from the relegation battle, and they didn't do it.
Yeah, you're right. I think the key for them was probably just maybe working some connections with Amanda Brozier and some of those ones to try and get them in permanently. But you're right. It's a little bit concerning. I think Leeds United is another team that obviously tried to sign Brendan Aronson and didn't go through. And yeah, there's a couple of teams there I think will be looking nervously over their shoulders. Even Brentford bringing in Christian Eriksen, he probably will help them just stay safe. But they've been on a bit of a slide as well. And you think defensively they could maybe have done with a few reinforcements. But yeah, there's a lot of teams down the bottom I think will maybe regret. Even Burnley bringing in obviously their course right at the end. That's what they needed to replace Chris Wood. But I feel like they could have maybe gone out and got a few more players as well. West Ham, someone's bringing that up.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
That's good, right? Nick, you go with that?
Yeah, I think I look at them and again, so many of these teams did spend a lot in the summer. I have a buddy who's a big Canary supporter, and I had asked him, in the middle of the season, well, what are they going to do in January? And he's like, Nick, they bought guys. They did business they don't normally do in the offseason. So it's hard to find a team. I mean, Burnley never buys. So, and you could argue that they only bought because Chris Wood went to Newcastle. So this is, I think it's just going to be fascinating. I'm excited for this run into the season. All the spots are up for grabs. There's a top 4 spot. Wolves are the kind of secret team here. They weren't using Traore a lot. They got some money for him to go back home. So I'll be interested to see Wolves, Brighton, these teams that tend to sign players that we don't hear about, but we know that they've got a good eye for it. If they get somebody who hits, Brighton gets somebody who hits, Palace get somebody hits. I know they made Mateta's loan full-time now, so it'll be interesting to see who's the surprise guy, because there's always somebody. These crack staffs, the people who use analytics well, that have managers. And again, you know how I feel about good Graham Potter, the next Pep Guardiola. He's a guy who I wonder, did they find the right fit? Because some of these guys haven't proven it at a very high level, but you look at their numbers and you think about the equivalent of a Pat Sindaka, or these guys who are now taking a jump from Salzburg to the Premier without a stop in between. If one of those guys hits, you're in a different ballpark.
Okay, here's a question. Craig Eaton says, who's going to make the top 4? I mean, do we change our minds based on deadline day or January transfer window, or who are you going with, Nick?
Nope. 1, 2, 3, 4. Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs.
Wow. Andy, agree with that?
I don't remember what I had before deadline day, but I think that's where I'm at after deadline day now. And for all the reasons that we just talked about, it feels like Spurs have targeted serious areas of weakness. A third or fourth attacker to go with what they've got up top in the established stars. A central midfielder who can progress the ball forward and not just sideways, I think is going to be really big for this team, and I think unlock a lot of possibilities under Conte. So they've just done the most to improve themselves when Manchester United and Arsenal, probably the 2 biggest competitors for it, they didn't do anything.
That's so true. West Ham as well, throw them into the mix. I feel, Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool. You know what? I'm going to say Man United. I don't know, for whatever reason. I feel like they just are not a good team to watch right now, but they are grinding out draws and wins under Ralf Rangnick, and they just have enough star power to get them over the line. I don't know. Something about it says it's going to be so tight between Tottenham, Arsenal, Man United, right up until the end of the window. Sorry, it is the end of the window, end of the season. And I think it really is just going to come down to who can deliver in the big moments. I think Man United have more experienced players who've done that in the past, be it Bruno Fernandes, Cristiano Ronaldo, Rashford, even Jadon Sancho can come up with big moments. I just think that's going to happen. But great question, Craig. I mean, that's really got us thinking here and thinking about the ramifications of what's been a crazy January and a crazy deadline day. Go ahead, Nick.
No, I was going to say, if you were to tell me that Ronaldo wasn't going to be the guy for them and then occasionally not start, we're going to see Sancho, we're going to see more of Rashford. I mean, I think Rashford's gotten stick just because Ronaldo's there. Like, I don't know that he's been hurt there. I think there was COVID with him as well. We haven't even seen the best of him yet. And Bruno Fernandes, maybe he's going to be recharged too. But I just don't, again, the Ronaldo move just seems so backwards. And I do have to say this. We give Ole Gunnar Solskjaer a lot of grief, but we talked about how likable he was. I don't know if you guys saw the picture of him at his daughter made her debut for the Manchester United women, and he had a big smile on his face. And I was like, I like to see happy Ole. Like, I like that. I feel good for him. It does feel like the vibes aren't exactly there right now.
No, it's a rebuilding process, and no one really knows what's going on. I think with Ralf Rangnick, in terms of how much influence he's going to have off the pitch when he goes into his consultancy role. But intriguing times. Okay, let's finish with this question from Immortal. Who's going to get relegated? I mean, basing on the moves we've seen this month, are we changing our mind? Is one team really elevated themselves? Because I think it's a four-way battle, right, lads? Norwich, Watford, Burnley, Newcastle, and maybe a Brentford or a Leeds can get dragged into it. But personally, I think Newcastle have elevated themselves away from the relegation scrap. I think that they've done more business and better business, solid business compared to the other teams. And I'm going to go first. I'd say Norwich, Watford, and Burnley would be my 3 to go down. But I don't know what you guys think, if you agree with that. But I just think that, especially in those 3 teams, they could have done more in the window. And I think all 3 just kind of said, you know what, we're not going to take a gamble. They're all kind of cautious clubs financially and weren't willing to risk going out and spending 20, 30 million on one player that's going to keep them up. Whereas Newcastle, with their new owners, we know they can do that, and they've obviously done that and spent a lot of money. So Norwich, Watford, and Burnley, my 3 are going down. What do we reckon, guys?
Yeah, I'm in agreement there, and I don't know that there's I don't know that by the end of the season there's a relegation battle. I think it might be pretty straightforward that it's those three. And I've been on the train that says, well, Watford have too much high quality attacking talent to go down. And I still believe that if Ismail Sarr can come back from injury and he can be very productive and he can, kind of lead that team once again, I think they will put up a fight and maybe make it interesting. But I think right now, given the way that their season is trending, Emmanuel Dennis has fallen off quite a bit. Joshua King, without those other two around him, is not getting the goals either. There's a lot of questions to be asked for Watford now that I didn't think were there a couple of months ago. So I agree. I think it's those three. Everton and Newcastle, I think, have done enough, whether we agree with the long-term strategy of some of those moves, to remove themselves, I think, even from the conversation maybe a month from now. It might just be as simple as they've played 3 or 4 or 5 games. They've picked up 2 wins and a draw or 2 each, and they're suddenly 10 points clear of the bottom 3, as is everybody else. Leeds, Brentford maybe could fall in there, but they would have to pick up, I think, about 8 or 10 points in the second half of the season to really truly fall into that. And that's really, really shocking poor form for a couple of teams that we have evidence and proof from the past. They can be good. They can play in the Premier League.
I'll tell you what.
Go ahead.
I got a surprise for you. I will mix it up. I think Leeds is going to go down. I think Leeds will go down.
No.
I have seen Marcelo Bielsa quit on teams before he started the job. He's a demanding guy. And if he ends up out of the picture, will it be a situation where they don't know how to play any other way? I need to know that Calvin Phillips is going to be back, and it seems like he's been going to be back for some time. I've seen Sarr score at AFCON. He's getting back. Cornet, at Burnley. So, yeah, Leeds. And then I've got the wild one that I don't think is going to happen because Newcastle's new ownership is not going to want to say they got it wrong on their first manager. But remember, if things start to go bad, remember how badly they wanted a guy who is now on the market in Rafa Benitez. Remember that they were going to take over the club, and he was staying for when the takeover happened. I just want to throw that into the ether. I do think there's a chance Newcastle finishes the season with Rafa Benitez in charge.
Do you want that?
I don't know. I'll tell you what. I was a big Eddie Howe fan for a long time. Yeah. I have not been encouraged by Ryan Fraser playing over Miguel Almiron and Matt Ritchie getting extended run and Sean Longstaff being in this part of the pitch. So they've given him a lot of ammunition now. And if it doesn't turn around within 3 or 4 weeks, I wouldn't be surprised if that money looks to Rafa Benitez.
Wow. Intriguing times ahead. The January transfer window always does this, right? It throws up more pressure on managers, clubs, players to kick on in the second half of the season. And we all know it's not that easy. It's very complicated to buy players in this window. So let's put a nice bow on this window now. Let's focus on a couple of things to finish up with. I want to ask you guys, what was your favorite transfer of deadline day or the January window? Andy, I'm going to come to you, mate.
That's a tough one. Sentimentally, Christian Eriksen for everything that it represents and having him back in the game and potentially returning to the field. I think in terms of impact and what's going to be consequences in the Premier League this season, it's got to be one of the signings probably that Spurs made, because if what Nick and I are feeling and have predicted comes true and they're the team that finishes top 4, it's probably because either Bentancur or Kulusevski have hit the ground running as soon as they landed in London and really given that team something that it's missing. The foundation is there for that Tottenham team. Antonio Conte has put that in place, 1, very quickly, but 2, before he brought in any of his own players, he found a way to take what was there. He found what was useful. He found what wasn't useful, put it into something, and it's been functional. It's been operational, and now it has the potential, I think, to be good and to start to realize some of the potential. So a Spurs signing to be determined based on who plays well during the second half of the season, I think is the one that makes the most impact.
Nick, what about you, mate? Favorite signing, favorite moment of the window?
I like that Arsenal bought 2 MLS players. Who saw that coming in Matt Turner and Austin Trusty, who's, of course, going back on loan to Colorado. And Colorado are really an organization I kind of admire for what they did this last year. And so how will they deal with that? It'll be very interesting. At least they get to keep him. But, yeah, look, you're looking at me. I told you how much I like the Kulusevski move. I love what Joe's about Alvarez at Man City. But To me, it's got to be Bruno Guimaraes. This is a player who is, again, the sort of signing that harkens back to 20, 25 years ago when Newcastle would bring in a Michael Owen, as ill-fated as it was, when they would bring in Johan Cabaye. And for 15 years, Newcastle fans got to watch the biggest pile of rumors of Dele Alli was identified by them early, by Chief Scout Graham Carr, and he never showed up. Alexander Lacazette was identified early. They didn't pony up the money. It was all players like this who would then go to other clubs and deliver. And you just got so sick of it. Virgil van Dijk, by the way, now imagine that. Just money-wise alone, if they get Van Dijk and Lacazette, are we not thinking about them building off of a Europa League season that was just 10 years ago, but might as well be 100? So I think that signing is big. It's a statement of intent. Whether it comes off and they survive, I don't know, but they needed that. Much like who was Sancho this summer. Even though that's not working out, Man United needed to make that signing to show they were still a player.
Yeah, and also a mention quickly, I don't know that an individual signing from Aston Villa will really factor into this conversation, but I think on the whole, just all of the signings together, every single one of them will have an impact on that team and fills a very specific and direct need within that squad. And I think they've just done really good business to make that team even better and stronger under Steven Gerrard.
Yeah, that was going to be my one. I think Coutinho stands out for me. Obviously, but yeah, it's just a nice thing to see him back enjoying his football after so long being on loan and Bayern Munich and then not really taking his chances at Barcelona and injuries. But going back to what you said, Andy, Christian Eriksen, I don't think you can beat that for a feel-good story. It's been rumored for the last few weeks, and now it's happened on deadline day. To see him when he comes back onto the pitch for the first time in the Premier League for Brentford, that's going to be a special moment, and that was a really special transfer. This has been really special, guys. Thanks so much for joining me for this lovely wrap-up of the January transfer window and deadline day. Thanks, everyone, for all your questions. We've loved interacting. Please send them in again on future chats we're going to have. And all I can do is direct you to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com. In the coming hours and days, we'll be breaking down all the moves. I'll have transfer grades tomorrow up on the website about which teams did the best moves, to give them a grade for all 20 clubs, who did well, who didn't do as well. We've already broken that down quite a lot tonight, but we're doing it even more. I'm really looking forward to the second half now and the business end of the Premier League season. So thanks so much, everyone, for watching. Thanks, lads, for joining me. And have a great rest of your evening, morning, night, wherever you're watching from. And we'll speak to you all very soon indeed. Thanks, guys. Take care.